Good evening, this is Catherine Sharp, and it's Sunday evening, so it is time for Sunday Reflection. And tonight we get to discuss more in depth Etzioni's contingency model, if you will, or his compliance typology. But Dr. Patterson, I appreciated his video just explaining how it really is a contingency model, and it seems as if Dr. Patterson kind of discovered this to bring it more to life in doing his studies and research, and that Etzioni wrote this for quite a while in the 50s, and then it was published in the early 60s. So I found that interesting. But it seems as if Etzioni talks specifically about the follower involvement, and it ties with kind of the French and Raven and Hershey and Blanchard, and the follower readiness with Hershey and Blanchard, and then French and Raven, how they have the different levels of power, if you will, and how they affect a specific employee or an organization, being expert and referent, legitimate, reward, and coercion, and the bottom three more specific to position, and then the top two, the expert and the referent, being more tied to the person. But then you carried that over into the Etzioni model, which showed basically the bottom line of the graph, if you will, shows influencers, and it shows involvement, and it was saying the higher the involvement, that ties their values and their goals specifically with the organization, and the closer, the tighter those are tied, the higher they are to the right, and then the lower they are, and he gave the example of someone in prison, that it's more coercive power in a sense, and it's also the alienative side, meaning they don't really have a choice and they're there because they have to be, and so you have to use coercive power. But I did find it interesting in tying it to my work, which is in hospital administration. And so I was able to, and this is hard to see, but I was able to kind of put together a graph similar but tied to my organization, and three specific examples how he talked about how Etzioni kind of proved the theory that the normative ties better with moral, which is the top right, that those two go hand in hand. That it's going to be hard to find, someone in the want to be area, such as a church or a nonprofit, but yet using coercion is not going to work on them. So you have to have normative behaviors to tie to that. And one specific example in healthcare is we are tied with organizations, our hospital is, outside of in our community, and two specifics are an organization called Communities in Schools, and they do a ton with us. We give a lot to communities and schools, but then they also give back. We have volunteers from their organization that comes and volunteers at our hospital, and so it's a great working relationship we have together. I sit on the board for Communities in Schools, and so I have a vested interest just because I have kids. I believe in what they do, which is serving the underserved high school age kids that don't have families and providing opportunity for them. So I have a vested interest in that. To coerce me into giving my time and efforts and money and our resources from the hospital, it's not going to do a lot. But to give me real life stories, to have testimonies from the kids and the lives that we're changing and what we are able to give to their organization, that's what keeps us tied to it. Same with March of Dimes. We work closely with March of Dimes, and to hear stories of babies that are being saved daily because of the money, because in what they're giving, that's why we want to be a part of March of Dimes. But then also you have the need to be, which is the calculative, tying up with the remunerative, which is a reward. It's kind of a you give, I give. I have to be here. It's not miserable, but I need a reward in that as well. And a department, say, we also are asking our employees to give to what we call the Good Government Fund, and it's a fund that's a federal fund, and it's basically paying for lobbyists and everything else that goes into government funding of healthcare. It's vital for us to try to keep healthcare costs low, but we have to give. We have a requirement to give to that. not as exciting to give to a good government fund as it is to give to March of Dimes or to communities and schools. So what we do is we offer our employees, if they give the expected level according to where they are in employment, then we offer them a day off of work, a free PTO day, and that works. And so it's kind of it's not as emotional, but there's a reward, and sure, we understand why we have to do it. And then lastly, the coercive with the alienative. He gave the example of prisoners. I wouldn't call it prison, but our sterile processing department. It's our employees who literally work day in and day out, just processing all of the equipment and all of the supplies that are used for our surgeries. And so there are so many steps that go through to do it with quality in the right way, according to tons of policy. And the only way that they can do that is, or let's say if they don't, if there are little areas that they skip or corners that they cut, it's known, and a repercussion can be an infection from a patient after a surgery. So when that happens, we have to use coercive power to make sure that they are doing the right things in the assembly line, if you will, in our sterile processing department. So anyways, I found this to be fascinating. I appreciate Dr. Patterson in bringing this to life, because I had never heard the name Etzioni. So thank you. I appreciate it, and y'all have a great week.